So far in the Shamatha practice, we've been working with the breath, and we've gone through 4 variations. We started with the full body breath practice, noticing sensations anywhere in the body associated with the breathing. We also looked at the rhythm of the breath, focusing on the rhythm of the breath. Then we worked with the abdomen yesterday, and today with the nostrils. So what we're going to do now is again a short 15-minute practice, and this time you can choose whichever one of those 4 variations you prefer to use. So you can do full body, the rhythm, abdomen or nostrils. So your choice. Okay, so let's do that 15-minute practice. So we begin by preparing the body. Allowing the breathing to settle into its natural rhythm. And preparing the mind. Allowing it to come to rest in the present moment. And simply becoming aware of the rhythm of the breath. And now you can stay with the rhythm of the breath, or if you prefer, you can go to either the full body, abdomen, or nostrils. And whichever variation of the breath practice you're doing, sustain it with mindfulness. So that more or less completes the introduction into the Shamatha practice using the breath as the object. Tomorrow we're going to begin with using the mind as the object. So is there any last questions about this Shamatha practice using the breath? Any one of the breath options?
I have 4 questions.
4? Very good.
So the first 2 are related to earlier today you mentioned the fact that you can know whether you're doing good or bad according to whether you follow the instructions or not.
Well, that's a better measure of good or bad versus am I having good experiences or pleasant experiences or unpleasant experiences.
Right. So questions number 1 and 2 regarding this. So question number 1, I'm having a bit of a struggle with morning meditations. I know that in a lot of traditions, the morning meditation considered to be a very important one, a very good one, recommended one. I am not a morning person at all. And what happens to me personally is that a lot of times my mind is not focused enough in the morning. I would say, let's say somewhere between, let's say earlier than 10:30 in the morning. My mind is not focused enough, and then like very quickly my thoughts are getting into this mini dream and I'll kind of like falling asleep.
Sure.
So my question is if you have any tips for people who are not morning people like myself.
Yeah. So the question is, in general, it's said that it's best to do daily practice early in the morning because usually we're most fresh and it's a good way to start the day. But my question is that, well, I'm not really a morning person, so what to do? And it's true that the different people have different rhythms, and even sometimes in the meditation text it mentions this. And actually, me personally, I'm also not much of a morning person. And certainly when I'm doing a retreat, as a generalization, I find that actually the time of day where I'm most focused is from late afternoon through early evening. So if we're one of these people, then we take advantage of that period of the day for meditation. But unfortunately for many of us, of course, having a normal daily schedule of work, then often that period of the day is not available because we're working. And then often when we get home from work, we're tired. But if we can arrange the day so that we have time available at that time where we're most sharp, then we could use that time of the day particularly for the Shamatha practice. So then we can do our daily Shamatha practice in late afternoon, early evening, if we can make that time available. So great. But still, I would recommend doing something in the morning. Certainly, at least setting a good motivation. And then what we can do if we're a bit sluggish in the morning, because remember we've got 3 main practices here in any Buddhist tradition. Is the Shamatha, the basis. On top of that, we have on that basis we have the Vipassana and the compassion. Now, both Vipassana and compassion are more active meditations. So then I think what would be good is if we're going to do some Shamatha later in the day, in the morning, again, set a good motivation and do a little bit more of an active meditation. Maybe do a loving kindness or compassion meditation, something that can really... So that I would recommend for that. Okay, so that's the first question. Then the next one. I wanted to add something more. One thing, though, one reason why many people are apart from different rhythms, another reason why many people are sluggish in the morning is, of course, we just don't get enough sleep. So if we're cutting the corners by not getting enough sleep, then we really need to address that and really shift something so that we're going to bed a little bit earlier and we're getting enough sleep. Otherwise, any sort of practice at any time of the day is going to be difficult because we're going to be very drowsy. Okay, so second question.
So example, when I'm having a hard time to follow the instructions. On the other extreme, there's also the problem of the time of the day where I'm really focused and I'm following the instructions so well. In fact, I'm doing it so good that I have time to, one, follow my abdomen, for example, to watch it rise and fall, two, to count, and three, to also compliment myself and to say, like, oh my God, I'm totally meditating the shit out of this meditation. This is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't take more than a second to understand that I'm not meditating the shit out of this meditation because this is lovely.
Right.
So in those type of cases, like, should I just start fresh, like start with the instructions new, just drop the instructions, like what should I do when I come across this?
I'm not sure the exact question. Can you sort of make it more succinct? The actual question. You said a few different.
If I'm finding myself following the instructions well,
right.
At the same time also finding time to compliment
myself. Okay. What to do about that?
Yeah, should I start from scratch?
Okay, yeah. So the question, I think, is that sometimes, we're following we're going very well in the meditation, we're following the instructions, but at the same time there's a lot of internal commentary going on. What should I do? Okay. As a beginner, actually, a little bit of internal commentary is not only useful, but sometimes often very necessary. Because when we're learning the practice and we're not so familiar with the practice, we have to occasionally remind ourselves of what we're supposed to be doing. Otherwise, we just sort of go off somewhere. So a little bit of commentary when we're learning the practice, actually very useful. A little bit like, when we're learning to drive the car, we need a bit of commentary like, okay, remember to look there, push that, do this, otherwise we're completely lost. But now, once we've learned to drive the car, if we do that commentary all the day, we'd go crazy if we had all this commentary going on when we're driving the car. It just becomes automatic. So similarly with this, is a little bit of commentary when we start to learn is good, to know what we do and not to do. But then as we get into the practice and we become more familiar with the practice, then we'll slowly need to let go of that commentary because it's served its purpose, and then otherwise it just becomes an obstacle. So sort of, slowly let go of commentary as we go. And if you notice a lot of commentary coming up, then just observe that commentary instead of getting caught up in it, and then it'll also pass. So we don't need to stop and start again, but just be aware if too much commentary comes, just to observe that and let it go, let it go, let it go. Okay, so this is the third one.
Thank you. The third one, you showed us the different techniques for meditation, in the Buddhist way. And I know there is another technique called body scan.
Body scan.
Is it also part of Buddhist technique? Or do you recommend to do it? You're not going to do it?
Right. So the question is, there are a number of different techniques in Buddhism, I think referring to stabilizing, analytical meditation and so forth. But then there's another thing which is body scan. What's that? Is that Buddhist?
Do you recommend also?
Well, it really depends a little bit the context you do that. Sometimes I think, like in MBSR, they just do a body scan to release tension in the body. I think that's part of MBSR, mindful space stress reduction. So there, the purpose of the body scan is just to notice any tension and release that. It's okay. Here, and maybe this is where you have heard about the body scan, is in the Goenka Vipassana retreat, they do body scan. But that's different than what you do in MBSR. Here, in the Goenka retreat, it's in the context of Vipassana practice. So simply doing body scan can be helpful to notice any tension and release it. But when body scan is done in that context, in the context of Goenka retreat, it's on the basis of a question. The question is what is the reality of the body? Is there anything stable and static there, or is everything changing moment by moment? That's the question. And then you scan. And then on the basis of scanning, based on that question, you can gain insight. But if there's no question, then there's no investigation, there's just scanning.
It can also be kind of a technique to learn being mindful of your body.
Exactly. So then it's not an insight practice, it's just a mindfulness practice, the scanning. So the scanning, again, that's done in the context of a Goenka retreat is a Vipassana practice, because that scanning is done on the basis of certain questions. Then it becomes a Vipassana practice. If you don't have any questions, then it's probably just a little bit of a mindfulness practice, and it may be just a practice to notice any tension and release that, which is also okay. So it depends a little bit the context of the scan, what type of practice it becomes. Okay?
So what motivation I set to myself whenever I'm doing it?
Well, the motivation, but also if there's any question behind it. Not just the motivation, but if you have a question that, like, is there anything stable here, or is everything changing? Then you do the scan, then you can come to an insight that, wow, there's nothing, everything's changing. That's an insight into impermanence. But if you don't have that question,